This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
This episode is brought to you by Prizepicks, largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Download the Prizepicks app today. Use code CLNS. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prizepicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. Also, Oturno Home Services, Greg's home comfort company. If you're looking for a team that puts your comfort first, visit oturnohome.com/Bedard for 10% off your next service. Could save you up to $1,000. We have so much that we have to cover. Before we get into the Patriots, though, I do want to warn people. We are recording this at 1:28 Eastern time on Friday. So we're just about 90 minutes away from the NHL trade deadline. If a Bruins trade happens, I am going to ask Greg about the trade because Greg's a big Bruins guy, and I know that he'll want to share his opinion on said trade or trades. So there's the warning up front. We will eventually get back to football after any trade talk if it breaks. Okay, let's start, though, with football. Let's play some in or out, Greg. Jonathan Allen officially released by the Commanders earlier today. Are you in or out on Jonathan Allen?
I am in, and I would be interested to see, what the timing is. Are the Patriots, so sort of set in their game plan to go for Milton Williams that they would wait for that, or would they jump the gun with Jonathan Allen? I think Jonathan Allen's a really good player. I think he would fit what Vrabel wants to do really well, so I would definitely be in on Allen.
I'm with you on that. He's a very good football player. He's a stud. And I think he would fit with what Vrabel and Terrell Williams want to do on that defensive line. I'd be in on him. But something that you mentioned, and it's going to be, I think, a theme here, is the timing of it all. Because do you jump on some of these guys that are released? Or do you wait? Do you try to trade for a receiver? Or do you wait if you're in love with Chris Godwin, who we'll get to a little bit later? Joey Bosa released. In or out, Greg?
Out. Nope. He's the Christian McCaffrey of defensive ends. I mean, look, he's a good player. Physically, he does everything you want at that position. Get off speed, strength, ability to set up the rush, counter moves, everything. But he's hurt all the time. And the other thing, and we sort of know this from the Patriots had some tussles with the Chargers there for a while, is I wouldn't call him the sharpest tool in the shed. I mean, the Patriots, every time they played them, easily handled him when he was on the field. And so, no, I mean, if I'm Joey Bosa, he's made enough money. I'm taking a cut rate deal. I'm going and playing with my brother for the 49ers, but no, I'm out on Bosa.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the brothers Bosa in San Francisco. And if you look at the games, last year he played 14 games. He started 9. So a little bit of a golf clap that he got into 14 games last year. But before that, 9 games, 5 games. He did play 16, then it was 12. He did play 16, then it was 7. He did play 16, then it was 12. So it's like, he's either going to be in there for 16 or he's going to miss, 6 or more games pretty much. He's just not out there enough to depend on. All right. Here's a familiar name just released in Houston. Shaq Mason.
Shaq would be well down the list for me. He would be a guy that, if I struck out in other places, if I was dead set on upgrading at guard, look, he's basically been a right guard most of his career. We know the Patriots have Michael Wenu there. Shaq is a declining player at this point. I'm not that interested in Shaq Mason, but if my other plans fall through, would he be a guy that I would bring in? Yeah.
Yeah, he had a down year last year, as you said. Before that, I mean, he has been one of the best guards in football. I don't think he's going to cost you a ton of money, but if you look at the interior offensive line, which we'll get into in a little while, even in free agency, there are some names there. And, I look at some other guys before I got to Mason, but if it's a situation where you got to break glass and you bring in somebody, so you say, all right, at least he'll compete with Layden Robinson and maybe City So, and we'll see what happens in the draft. You bring him in, and he's part of the mix. I think that's the part that I would say of, his career at this moment is I would bring him in. He could be part of the mix. But if I can get an upgrade, I'm getting the upgrade first and foremost. All right, let's talk about receivers. Tyler Lockett of the Seahawks was released.
So I love Tyler Lockett. I think he would definitely be a fit for what they try to do as sort of a slot receiver who's not afraid to stick his nose in the run game. Like Mason, he would be further down the list for me. It would be sort of like, all right, if I can't get Chris Godwin, if I can't get Cooper Kupp, if I can't get somebody like that, maybe down the line. I mean, personally, what I'm hoping for is that Tyler Lockett goes to the Raiders to help Pete Carroll sort of institute his program there. And suddenly Jacoby Myers becomes available. Now the Patriots can get Jacoby Myers on a cheap trade. We know that he is plug and play in this offense. We know how, he's not going to blow anybody away athletically. We all know that, including during his time with the Patriots, but he is rock solid. He would be great for Drake May. So, if that's what I'm rooting for, that Lockett goes to the Raiders and Jacoby can come back to the Patriots and sort of, get the program going and at least buy them some time for the younger guys and anybody they draft to sort of get up to speed. But again, Jacoby would be sort of down the list for slot receivers for me, but somebody I would definitely like to have.
I mean, he's a little long in the tooth, but when you look at it, he's 32 right now. And he's coming off a 49 catch season, but the prior years, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 5 prior seasons to last year, when of course Jackson Smith and Jigba, took over, and you had Jackson Smith and Jigba and DK Metcalf you had to deal with, right? So of course Lockett's going to get less opportunity. But I mean, when you look at it, like he had 74 targets last year. That was his lowest target volume since 2018 when he had 70 targets. He had 57 catches in 2018. He had 49 last year. So it's not a huge drop-off given rate of target. But the year before that, 2023, 79 catches. 2022, 84. 2021, 73. In 2020, he caught 100 footballs. In 2019, he caught 82. So he had a really good stretch of, 5 years before last season, and you could chalk up last season to he just fell down the depth chart. So a very interesting option if he gets to, go around and talk to people in the league. I do think he's going to end up with Vegas, with Pete Carroll, but we'll see if that happens. All right, the other guy, I just mentioned him a moment ago. The other receiver out of the 3 in Seattle, DK Metcalf. Greg, we've discussed, the idea of Metcalf. Could Metcalf ask out? Would he want out? Well, now we know, yes. He has asked out. He wants out. What do you think of Metcalf? First, I want to ask you of just Metcalf as a receiver. Where do you put him in the, do you put him in the upper echelon in the NFL, or do you kind of look at him below the Justin Jeffersons, Jamar Chases? Is he more tier 2, quasi maybe even tier 3?
Yeah, I would say he's more tier 2. I mean, as far as boundary receivers, he would be in the top 10 for me. I like Metcalf. I like his physicality, his explosiveness. I mean, we saw the long touchdown that he had against the Patriots this past year where he just dusted everybody. I mean, there was a coverage breakdown between Gonzalez and Duggar. Shocking. That didn't happen at all last year. No. But Metcalf for me, I mean, I'm in. I mean, we'll get into sort of the pecking order for the receivers, but AJ Brown would be my number 1 as far as going for him. Then I would probably go to Metcalf. I mean, because the Patriots just need that type of big physical receiver on the outside, and I think he can be that. I mean, he'd be in the group with, it'd be like AJ Brown. Then I would probably go Ayuk and then Metcalf. But yeah, I mean, and the Patriots are calling on all these guys. They are leaving, and they shouldn't. This is every front office is leaving no stone unturned. So, we'll have to see how that goes.
Let's talk price. What would you be willing to give up for Metcalf?
For Metcalf, I would really like to give up. I would really love to give up future picks, but in any trade, I'm sort of looking at, because the Patriots have an extra third this year. Um, probably one of those thirds. That's what I have earmarked for a trade. Plus, and if they need anything else, then go into next year. But probably I would probably go a third and then something extra. I really don't want to give up that second round pick because it's so high. But I would think about it.
I've said I give up a second this year and maybe a third next year, but I'd also see what the market is. That might be the most I'd be willing to offer, thinking that you're probably going to have to overspend, even not only in assets but money. But let me ask you this, because this has been kind of thrown out there as a possibility. I think the first guys that brought this up were Alex Barth and Evan Lazar on their podcast. Would you be willing, Greg, to move from 4 to 18 in the first round? To, say you go from 4 to 18 for Metcalf, and then maybe you have to throw in like a later pick to go along with that. I believe Mark Bertrand last night on Early Edition, NBC Sports Boston, mentioned that the value of moving back from 4 to 18 is like the 28th pick in the draft. So would you be willing to move from 4 to 18 if it meant you got Metcalf?
That's a great question. 4 to 18. I don't think I would. I just think, the possibility of landing somebody like Travis Hunter at 4, if that happens, and plus remember, you're also going to have to pay him. We're talking about Metcalf here. You're going to have to pay him a boatload of money, and that has to factor into things. If it comes to it, if they strike out with, like, say, an AJ Brown and a Brandon Ayuk, I would definitely consider it. I would rather not do that.
I would not do that right now because I don't know who's going to be there at 4. There's still some time here. And man, oh man, if there's a scenario that Travis Hunter's sitting there at 4 and you traded out of that spot to bring in DK Metcalf, I would be pissed at myself if I were the Patriots. So unless I had a clear idea that Travis Hunter had no chance in hell of getting to 4, I am not looking to move back. No, thank you. Because I am eyeing Travis Hunter.
Yeah. Right. And here's the thing, Nick, on Travis Hunter. And I think we talked about this. Like, one thing, in your evaluations, and I know, like, a lot got made out of Elliot Wolf telling, I think it was Patriots.com, that Matt Groh wrote up 2 scouting reports on, Travis Hunter. And of course, that scares people because you hear Matt Groh and it's like, Elliot Wolf and Robin Glazer, like, all of a sudden they're like bad words. First of all, at the time when he went out to scout, you got to remember, Elliot Wolf was holding Gerard Mayo's hand when it came to what was going on with the Patriots. In a lot of other situations, like, Elliot Wolf would have been the guy to go out there. But remember, Matt Groh was director of player personnel during the college season.
Right.
That's sort of his job, whether you like it or not. But, Travis Hunter, the thing is, you got to remember, like, he played both ways in college. So have we seen the greatness of him at either position? I don't think we have. And, the more I watch him on film at wide receiver, the more I'm impressed with him. I mean, I don't see why he can't be like a CD Lamb type of receiver. I mean, I know he's slight. He's like 6'4", 185 pounds, I think, or something like that. But, you look at whether it's, Devontae Smith or Jackson Smith and Jigba, or, CD Lamb, these aren't big dudes, and they're really freaking good. And I think, if I'm the Patriots, I'm not afraid to look at Hunter as as a wide receiver. And so that goes to your, I mean, if suddenly they do that and then we get to the draft and Travis Hunter staring, at the Seahawks at number 4, I'm not going to be happy about that.
I mean, I look at the situation with Hunter, and you mentioned it. Again, he's not putting his full focus on receiver or cornerback when he's playing both ways full time at Colorado. And to think that he can brush up on the route running and make that sharper, he's got just tremendous hands. I mean, crazy hands. And so I think you mentioned Devontae Smith. That's been the comp from a lot of people. I know Lance Zierlein is one of those guys that has comped that. And I just think he's a talented guy. And, reports are that he's not necessarily telling teams where he wants to play. However, there was a report this week that the tone in the meetings that Hunter took, teams felt like he would rather play receiver than cornerback. And so if I'm the Patriots and he wants to play receiver more than cornerback, I would be thrilled to get him at 4. I think he has the talent to be a number 1 receiver. Now, he's not the outside X guy. He's not the big-bodied outside X. But by 2026, I think you're talking about a guy who could easily be one of the best receivers on a football team, if not the best receiver on a football team. So I would be completely fine with that. Last question about Metcalf. Reportedly, he'd want around $30 million a year. What do you think the Patriots would have to pay him to have him say, yes, okay, I'll make that move?
Hang on one second. I'm just looking at the receiver market right now. That's basically $30 million a year is Amon-Ra St. Brown, Tyreek Hill, Ayuk. Yeah, he's right there. You have to pay that, and I would pay that.
All right. So big time money for DK Metcalf. We've got more to talk about, but first let's have Greg talk about Prizepicks.
Prizepicks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prizepicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prizepicks. I love sitting down with the game, watching it. Was watching the Celtics, thinking about Nick Cattles being there and nobody's playing. But he did but he did get to see Jason Tatum have a relatively easy night with big stats. And you could have hit on that if you believed. I'm sure Nick did. Prizepicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Think Jason Tatum will get more than 5 3-pointers next game. Jaylen Brown for more than 35 points. Cook up your hot takes with your friends and win real money this basketball season when you and your crew run your game on Prizepicks. Which players are going off, which ones aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prizepicks. Download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prizepicks, run your game.
So I just want to mention this off the top. And yes, I was at that game last night. And I can officially say I was in person to witness Baylor Shireman's best NBA game, baby.
Woo!
15 points. Let's go, Baylor. It was actually a fun game.
Save that virtual ticket.
It was actually a fun game. I went to the Heart before the game with Kelly. We had a couple of drinks. I went by Sully's because I always have to go by Sully's when I'm down there. So I went by Sully's Tap for a beer, and then we hung out at the game. And Tatum was just, I'm telling you, when you're there in person, it's so easy to him. It's scary. And I know he was playing against, a bunch of backup dudes for the most part, but he makes it look easy against some of the best. He just went out there and dropped 18 in the first quarter like it was no big deal. Just effortless. The guy is so talented. All right, let's get back to football, though, because this just happened. This is not a surprise. But Harold Landry officially released by the Tennessee Titans. Will he be a Patriot in the next 72 hours, Greg?
He could. I mean, look, we know how well he played for the Titans and Vrabel and all those guys there. Is he my favorite edge player? Do I think he's going to change the game or change a lot of things for the Patriots? No, but he understands the program. He's a good player. We know he came from BC. I think it would be a really good fit. He's I'm interested. He would be in line with these sort of mid-range pickups that we talked about, like the Commanders did so well last year, getting guys that people knew, whether it was Dan Quinn or Cliff Kingsbury or, any of those guys, the GM from being in San Francisco, guys that that you're going to get that are going to be good, solid football players for you. Landry would fit that bill and, would definitely be part of the fabric for me going forward.
All right, let's talk about another pass rusher, Trey Hendrickson. He's been made available by the Bengals. Shocker, the Bengals are not going to pay Hendrickson, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. Crazy, I know. But Hendrickson has been made available, and I don't think it's a coinky-dink, Greg, that he was made available immediately following the Max Crosby extension in Vegas. I think Mike Brown saw that contract and had heart palpitations. Would you be interested in Hendrickson if you were Mike Vrabel and company?
I would not. He's 30 years old. I know he led the league in sacks last year. He's a good player. I'm just really worried. I mean, considering like you're gonna have to trade for him, he wants to get paid near the top of the market. What Crosby's getting paid. Like I said, he's 30. We all saw sort of what happens, and not everybody's the same, but we just saw this with Matthew Judon, how guys can be very productive, and then suddenly they get over 30 and they fall off a cliff. You just worry about, do I think you're going to get 2 really good years from Trey Hendrickson? Yeah. But beyond that, it's really, really dicey. And so, no, I'd leave that for somebody else.
All right, let's get into free agency. As part of the free agency conversation, Mike Giardi, your guy over at BSJ, he tweeted out today that from the people he has spoken with, sounds like Chris Godwin could get as much as $25 million a year. At that price, Greg, are you still in the Chris Godwin game?
That is really rich for a guy coming off a dislocated ankle.
It's steep.
I would be more willing to do like say around like 20. Where were the Patriots last year with Calvin Ridley? Were they north of 20 with him?
I think they were right around 20-ish, right?
Yeah.
Because you got
I'm not going
to say, I think.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say no because I love Godwin and I think he's a really good player. That's really rich, but look, especially if other things don't pan out. I mean, I do see Godwin more. I look at these guys in 2 buckets: the sort of boundary guys and the interior slot guys. And I think Godwin would be great for the room. I think it would be great for Jalen Polk to learn from a guy like that who's a complete and total pro. If I can't get, sort of, I'm spending my most money on the boundary X, the AJ Browns, the Metcalfs, the Ayuks, guys like that. But if that doesn't happen, then yeah, maybe I'm willing to do that for Godwin.
Reportedly, the Patriots were around roughly $22 million per year. Ridley actually got $23 million per year from Tennessee. So just to put a bow on that. All right, let's talk about free agency. It's a fun time. It's probably an overrated time when it comes to team building. Yeah. But it's exciting. It's exciting. And obviously the Patriots have a bunch of needs. So let's start with your needs. And this is how Greg ranked the needs, okay? His top need is offensive tackle. How do you slot the free agents, Greg, that right now, currently, are going to be available on Monday?
Number one by far, and I'm putting all my eggs in this guy's basket, it's Ronnie Stanley from the Ravens. I know he's had durability issues in the past. He had a really, really rough injury, and I think it was 2020, and it's taken him a while to get back up. But, he played the most snaps out of anybody last year. Total pro, really good player, instantly gives the Patriots credibility and adequate left tackle play. I'm all in on Ronnie Stanley. He's my number one free agent out of anybody that they can add because it's such a need for this team. So it's Ronnie Stanley number one. And then there's a huge drop off to me. Nick. Dan Moore from the Steelers is, okay. Again, we're getting into guys, that we're about to talk about that, their teams don't want them. I mean, it should be a humongous red flag if a guy who plays left tackle in this league, their team doesn't want them. And we talked about that with Alaric Jackson with the Rams. And then suddenly the Rams, stepped up, probably because they looked at the alternatives out there and were just like, whoa, it's better to go with the guy that we know. So Dan Moore from the Steelers is next. He's okay. I mean, he's gonna have his struggles. Is he an upgrade over Vederian Lowe? Yes, of course. And that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about the Patriots getting better. Then I would put Cam Robinson from the Vikings, who originally started with the Jaguars. This is somebody that Doug Marrone knows from his time with the Jaguars. Cam Robinson struggled a lot last year, but he does have the traits that you're looking for. You're hoping with, the Patriots, remember, they now have 3 offensive line coaches, plus Dante Scarnecchia being involved. I think Scar, as we talked about before, I think he's just going to be more involved as a consultant with the coaches and sort of bridging the gap between McDaniels and, Marrone and the rest of these guys, Huftalling and Kugler. But, do you, as the Patriots, now that you have 3 offensive line coaches, do you bet on traits and say, like, we have enough guys to really work with these guys and get them better? And so Robinson would be number 3. Jedrick Wills from the Browns, 10th overall pick. This would only be if Rabel signs off. Rabel was in that room. He knows the deal with Wills. I don't think it would be overly expensive. Again, this is a guy with traits that you're hoping will be better, but a lot of red flags as far as his football character. And then if all else fails, Tyron Smith, who gets hurt all the time. That's going to be part of the deal, but when he's on the field, he's still damn good. And so I wouldn't completely eliminate him from the list, especially if I get desperate.
Yeah, so obviously Stanley, we all want Stanley. Cam Robinson, I've been rough on Cam because of this past season. He wasn't good. He was god-awful in the playoff game. However, I did find this note from Pro Football Focus this week that made me feel better about a possible Cam Robinson signing if you don't get Stanley. Here's what Pro Football Focus wrote. Although Robinson posted a 67.2 pass blocking grade with the Jags and Vikings last year, he's been one of the better pass protecting tackles in football. Since 2021, his 77 pass blocking grade ranks 13th among qualified tackles. So, I mean, when you look at that, yeah, it was a rough year last year. He was traded, which doesn't make it any easier. You have the Doug Marrone connection, who was with Jacksonville when Cam was drafted down there in Jacksonville. And the Jaguars had a younger left tackle that they liked more, and so they signed him to an extension and then traded Cam Robinson. So after looking at that, I don't feel as bad about the idea of Cam Robinson as I did beforehand. All right, defensive tackle, rank them.
Defensive tackle, Milton Williams with a bullet from the Eagles. Gap penetrator, totally fits what the Patriots want to do. Jonathan Allen, who we talked about, I wouldn't say he's as much of a pass rusher as Milton Williams. But then again, he has a longer track record. Milton Williams, you're banking on, the upside because he still hasn't even entered his prime. Tershawn Wharton from the Chiefs. He's a guy I've always liked. Thickly built in the lower regions, can get after things, can penetrate gaps. Draymond Jones from the Seahawks, similar, another gap penetrator type of guy. Poona Ford is he's a little bit of a tweener in that he can defend the run a little bit, but he is also another gap penetrator. Levi Onwuzurike.
Good luck.
Yeah. From the Lions. Again, another, all these guys are gap penetrators pretty much. I mean, Allen's not as much. Allen and Poona Ford probably aren't as much. And BJ Hill, has always been a good player and could definitely help, further down the list to sort of elevate the room.
All right, so we talked about Shaq Mason earlier in the program. Interior offensive line. Actually, sneakily, lots of interesting names as part of this market, Greg. Tell us some of the guys that you would like.
Yeah, Will Freeze from the Colts would be my number one. He had an injury last year, but before that, really good, solid player, a guard. I think he would be plug and play at left guard for this team and would elevate the level of play. Drew Dahlman, center, big fan. I think he's a really good player. I would not be surprised, Nick, if we look at a scenario where the Patriots get a center and, maybe bid adieu to David Andrews. The Patriots, they need to know what they have. We'll see how that goes. Patrick Mekari from the Ravens.
Yep.
I'm not a huge fan. I think he's been overrated in this free agency. He can play all 5 positions. That's sort of the appeal of him, that, he's played a ton of tackle. He's played some guard. You could fit him, wherever you need to. So, if you're the Patriots and you strike out on some guys, Mekari's sort of like a good backup plan to elevate the line. Josh Myers, the center, from the Packers, solid player, not great. I think he's definitely behind Dahlman as far as center. I don't know if you would necessarily, that would spell the end of David Andrews, but it could. Will Hernandez is he's always been a good, solid guard. I'm a fan. Tevin Jenkins from the Bears, his film is really good, but a lot of injury problems. He never stays on the field. And, look, the Bears just swapped that. They just brought in 2 guards. Jonah Jackson, they just traded for, and of course, Joe Thuney. So, the Bears didn't want to wait for him. They'd rather go trade to upgrade their guard. So, what does that tell you? And, sort of down the list, a guy to bring in to compete, Dylan Radins from the Titans, who Vrabel and all those guys know, very well. Tough guy. Not a great player, but sort of somebody you bring in to compete and at least be sort of a veteran backup on the interior.
I would like Jenkins. I get the injury concerns. The interesting thing about Jenkins is you got Hotailing, who was on Chicago staff last year as the assistant O-line coach. Thomas Brown was on the Chicago Bears coaching staff. Both those guys now here in New England. So obviously they would have some intel. Before we get to more free agency talk, Greg, we have a Bruins trade. I don't know the details just yet, but Charlie Coyle has been traded to the Avalanche, according to Fluto Shinzawa. So we don't know what Coyle is going to get for the Bruins in return. But here's what I'll say about it as we wait for the details. Here's what I'll say. Right decision. And this gives me some hope, Greg, that over the next hour, because we are at 2:00 Eastern time, this gives me the hope that Sweeney, big old Sween, is going to be swinging his Sweeney and deciding to trade some of these guys that have term. Coyle, Carlo, Zaka. Yes, we talked about it last time, I think, Greg. You take phone calls on Marchand and you move Marchand, I think, if you don't get a deal done with him contract-wise. This is what the Bruins should be doing. Retool, trade some of these guys. And the move of Coyle makes me feel like that's what the Bruins are exactly doing now.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% and on everything. I mean, I think, I'm tired of watching this Bruins team and what they've been doing, and they don't have it. And so you look at it and you're like, all right, well, what's the path forward? Like, well, we're just going to keep everybody, and they got nothing in the ranks coming up through prospects. They have to rebuild, and that starts with, through the draft. And, Coyle, from Weymouth, of course, good, solid player for the Bruins, but I hope this is just the beginning. I'd be selling everything that they can and just biting the bullet, because this team needs to start over.
And look, this is this is a seller's market. You got a 2nd-round pick and a 4th-round pick for Trent Frederick, who is dinged up on a down year, is an unrestricted free agent. It's a seller's market. This is when you pull the trigger, especially because of what you can get back. Now, look, I am not a hardcore NHL guy. I watch the Bruins, so I don't know if this means anything to you, Greg, but Pierre LeBrun says that Casey Middlestat is part of the deal, but there are also other parts to the Charlie Coyle deal to Colorado. So I'll keep an eye on that while Greg tells us about Oturno.
Yes, absolutely, I will. As someone who's spent years covering football, I know what it takes to be on a winning team. It's about reliability, precision, and showing up when it matters most. When it came to my own home and my heating system, I needed a team I could count on, and Oturno Home Services delivered. Oturno is local. They are family-owned and family-focused and have been servicing the greater Boston area for 15 years. From start to finish, they made the process of upgrading my heating system seamless and stress-free, and they go above and beyond with everything they do. Their professionalism, timeliness, replacing a valve that was shot just to get me through for 4 days until they put in my new furnace. That's the type of company that Oturno is. Oturno isn't just about heating. They're my go-to for plumbing, cooling, and even water and air quality solutions. They've got the expertise to handle whatever your home needs. Here's the best part. You can get 10% off your next service with Oturno. That could save you up to $1,000 on your next project. Just visit oturnohome.com/Bedard for all the details. That's NOTTURNO home.com/Bedard. Take advantage now. This deal won't last forever. If you're looking for a team that puts your comfort first, visit oturnohome.com/Bedard. I trust Oturno. You should too.
So obviously, I know that, Middlestat, again, I don't know a ton about him. I don't watch him on a nightly basis. I understand he was a top pick for the Sabres going back to 2017, 8th pick overall. I knew that. Just pulling up his stats quickly. His best season was in 22-23, 59 points for the Sabres. This year he has 34 points in 63 games, plus minus of -12. So that's the first piece that we know of that the Bruins are getting back for Coyle. And again, Pierre LeBrun says there's more pieces, other pieces as part of this trade. So we'll see what those other pieces are. So there you go. All right. Before we get back to football, I want to remind you, $50 the year, BSJ, Bedard, Giardi, tag teaming on Patriots. Some of the best coverage you will read anywhere in the NFL right there. And also download the Prizepicks app today. Use code CLNS. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. All right, Greg, let's continue. Your 4th need for this team is wide receiver. And interestingly enough, as part of the list that you wrote down here, you do include trades. So you are including guys that you could trade for. Give the fine listeners and viewers your thoughts.
Number 1, A.J. Brown trade. He's my number 1. He would be number 1 for the Patriots. He would change things. I do think that there's a chance. I mean, I know, Howie Roseman is not afraid to wheel and deal. And I would be going hard after A.J. Brown. Chris Godwin would be my second target. I think we talked about him earlier. He would upgrade the room. Total pro, would be perfect in Josh McDaniels' system. We know he's been in it, from Tom Brady. So I think he would be great. So Godwin would be more of, in the slot bucket. Brandon Ayuk trade would be number 3 for me. I'm hoping that the 49ers eat a little cash on that in the first year, because you're probably not getting Ayuk till the middle of next season, coming off the injury. But the Patriots identified him. I mean, there is a little buyer beware on him. I mean, the 49ers, pretty much after they signed the deal, they had second thoughts. There was a blow up on the field about Ayuk's shorts with Shanahan.
Yeah.
There's definitely risk involved, but I think he's worth it. Devontae Adams, I think, would be 4th on my list, just ahead of DK Metcalf, because you don't have to give up anything. And plus, he wouldn't be top of the market. And I think he would be. We know how good he is in Josh McDaniels' system. Say what you want about their relationship. As far as I know, it wasn't bad. And I don't think it would preclude him from coming here. I do think he's going to go to either the Rams or the Chargers. I think he wants to be in California at this point in his career. So it's probably a long shot, but I would definitely be in on that. DK Metcalf trade would be number 5 for me. I do have a little bit of a worry about him, as far as, is he going to be that guy for you? Is he going to be, you're going to pay him near top of the market? Is he going to reflect well in the room with that? I don't know. And so that scares me a little bit. Then it would be a Jacoby Myers trade. I think he signed for 1 more year, wouldn't take much compensation, plug and play. It would help. Again, that would be if, say, Godwin doesn't happen. He would be in that slot bucket. Josh Palmer from the Chargers, good, solid player, would upgrade the room. Darius Slayton, similar with the Giants. Then I would go Cooper Kupp. I think he's going to be released. I would not trade for Cooper Kupp on that contract. He has a tough time making it through a whole season, but his professionalism, what he would bring to that room would be worth it for me.
Yep.
Nick Westbrook-Ikhine from the Titans, good player, had a bunch of touchdowns last year. The Titans guys, they all know him, was their draft pick. Good, solid player. I love Mac Hollins. Not going to overly impress you. He's sort of like, Jacoby Myers in a bigger body, but he was great with McDaniels, with the Raiders. He's clutch, tough as hell, blocks, total pro. I love Mac Hollins. Contributes on special teams. And then De'Ami Brown, Washington, good player, would be in that slot bucket as well, just a little bit further down the list.
I like Joshua Palmer. He's got inside outside versatility. I think he's been somewhat overlooked in LA, and he's from what I know, he's a pretty high character guy. So I like Palmer as one of those guys that you might be able to get for $5 or $6 million a year. And if that's the case, then I just like the idea of bringing him in. And so that's one of the names that jumps out at me, aside from the other ones that are just, obvious. AJ Brown I agree with you. He's like my favorite guy on this list. Godwin, Adams, no issue. Myers, I think we know what we're getting if you're the Patriots and you bring him in. So agree with most of that list. By the way, Greg, the rest of the trade return for Charlie Coyle is Zellers. So you got William Zellers and you've got a 2nd-round pick. So pretty big return for Charlie Coyle. That's a pretty delightful move by
I will say I'm not a big fan of Middlestats.
No.
Hopefully, maybe that's about moving like cap space at some point after the season. He plays like no defense. I'm not a big fan.
All right. I think that's pretty good for Coyle. By the way, Middlestat, 2 years, $5.75 million a year left on Middlestat's contract. He's only 26. So, maybe the Bruins feel like they can get a little bit more out of him offensively. They get Zellers, who is, a young prospect from the Avalanche, left wing. He's 18. It's freaking like 18 years old. I feel so old when I read stuff like that. And you get a 2nd-round pick. I mean, now the Bruins right now have a first, right? They have a first and they have 2 seconds in this year's draft. So keep trading, keep getting assets, keep doing what you're doing. Don Sweeney, all of a sudden, make me feel good about you right now, please. All right. Defensive end. What do you got?
Number 1 for me is Dayo Odeyingbo from the Colts. This is a guy who's, on the upside. He's like 6'4", 280, big physical dude. I really like him. I don't know if he's quite the fit for what Vrabel wants to do, but definitely somebody that I would investigate. Chase Young, nobody's really talking about him.
Yeah.
which is puzzling to me. I mean, we all know that, wasn't he? He was the first overall pick, wasn't he?
It was either 1 or 2.
Yeah, but he was, we sort of know his history, but I mean, he had unbelievable production last year for the Saints, and I think he would be tremendous in this system. Malcolm Kuntz from the Raiders, a guy that Josh McDaniels knows well. Coming off an injury, was an ascending player before that. Good pass rusher. I moved up now with the Harold Landry news. I moved Landry up behind Kuntz. Again, I think that he's the type of guy that would improve the room and buy you time to sort of develop younger players behind him. Azeez Ojulari, good player, has, been productive, has more, certainly can do more, I think, and would be a guy with upside. And Joseph Asai, who I think has always been sort of underrated for the Bengals. I think he's been a really good player and productive, and I think that he would fit the system.
Yeah, I like Ojulari. I think that's somebody that you can get more out of with Williams and Vrabel. I think they could coach him up a little bit. He had a lot of potential coming out. Chase Young, by the way, was a second pick in the draft, so he was number 2. And I wonder, obviously Chase Young played for Ohio State, so is there some kind of, intel, I would imagine, that Vrabel could get about Chase Young? He's been injured, but they're saying he's healthy, and if he's healthy, he's a really talented guy. All right, cornerback. Interestingly enough, Jordan Schultz, I believe, just tweeted out a little while ago that Byron Murphy is going to hit free agency for the Vikings. The Patriots have reportedly been interested or are interested in Murphy. So run down some of your cornerbacks. Is Murphy on that list?
Yeah, as far as I know, I mean, I think the Patriots are in on at least the top 3 on this list. Have kicked the tires. DJ Reed from the Jets, who we've talked about before. I love DJ Reed. I love the compete. I think he would fit exactly what they want to do on defense here. I think he would be great opposite Christian Gonzalez, the same way he was with what's his name? Just slipped my mind. The Jets top cornerback. Sauce Gardner. Yeah, and the thing was before, I mean, until they fired Saleh, those guys were like unbelievable together. And I think that DJ Reed is awesome. I really like Byron Murphy a lot. A little bit longer than DJ Reed. Would be an excellent number 2. Really good player, does everything you want, good ball skills, tackles well. Same with Charvarius Ward. I think that he's still got a lot left in the tank. I think he's a good player, good compete. And Carlton Davis gets his hands on a lot of footballs. Good player. I think he would definitely would upgrade the Patriots at number 2 and has a little slot versatility. Oh, and one guy I forgot to put on my list, Nate Hobbs from the Raiders. We talked about him last time. I love Nate Hobbs. I really do.
You're a big Nate Hobbs guy.
Yeah, he is. Vrabel's talked about the importance of the nickel position. To me, Nate Hobbs is plug and play, nickel, tough as nails, physical. He's a baller. He plays with attitude. I love me some Nate Hobbs.
DJ Reed, I'm in on that. I like the idea of Kendall Fuller because I think you can get him cheap on a 1-year deal, and he was pretty good before the last year or two when he had some injuries. But you can get him healthy, you can get him going again. I think he's somebody else that you could play in that nickel. I think you bring back Jonathan Jones, but I would bring him back and slide him to free safety, or at least have the thought that he can compete there. All right, linebacker, Greg.
Linebacker, this is a good group. The Patriots could do some things if they want to totally change things and maybe move on from, a Bentley and a Tavai, where you're like, I don't really know if these guys fit what the Patriots want to do long term. Dre Greenlaw from the 49ers coming off an injury. If I'm the Patriots, I'm lying in wait and I'm pouncing on him and stealing him for the 49ers. I mean, I was just reading Michael Silver had a piece on the 49ers, and
what a piece that was, by the way. Michael Silver's story on the Niners is just excellent about how Shanahan ran up the stairs to John Lynch's office because he thought Lynch was finishing up a trade of Ayuk to Pittsburgh, and he barged into the office and pretty much stood on the table and said, you can't trade him. I mean, just great from Mike.
Yeah, I mean, but the big takeaway from it is that, the 49ers are tightening their belts because, I mean, they spent like $350 million last year to go like 6-11. And that's why you see Debo going out the door, Ayuk. In that story, he said like the 49ers would love to have Dre Greenlaw back, and they're trying to get him back on a 1-year deal. Now, if I'm the Patriots, like, I'm going right in there and being like, nope, here's a 3-year deal for you for big money. Like, come to us. Jamie and Sherwood from the Jets, who the Patriots have been linked to. Dude hits like a Mack truck. I've always liked Sherwood on tape. He's smaller. He's lighter. In this new scheme, you're hoping that all the penetrating of the gaps up front keeps the linemen off the linebackers. So that's why you can have smaller, lighter linebackers that can sort of flow and hit, and Sherwood would fit that. Nick Bolton from the Chiefs doesn't really fit that. He's sort of like a bigger, thicker linebacker and not that great in coverage, but I do think he's a really good player, and I would be interested in it. Ernest Jones is a guy who was in Tennessee, who went to the Seahawks, another, sort of run around type of linebacker that would fit what they do. Same with EJ Speed, another guy that would fit exactly what the Patriots want to do. I mean, all these guys do. Robert Spillane from the Raiders. Do the Patriots look at, is he much of an upgrade over Christian Ellis, who they tendered as a restricted free agent? I would say yes. I like Spillane a lot. Sort of like a weak side linebacker, can fill in at the mic if you need to, but Josh McDaniels knows a lot about him. And I put Divine Diablo, another ex-Raider that McDaniels knows. Unbelievable athlete, not a whole lot of football IQ. I haven't seen him in a couple years, so maybe that's gotten better. But, I think he would be a guy that would upgrade, the depth at linebacker. And also, you can match him up with certain guys. Tight ends, he's matched up with Kelsey in the past and done a pretty good job against him, and can contribute on special teams.
Divine Diablo, just because of the name. I mean, are you kidding me? Jamie and Sherwood, that dude's a beast. I think he'd be so much fun to watch. He'd be so. You and I have been screaming for now going on 5 years. We're close to 5 years, by the way, almost the 5-year anniversary of this podcast. We've been screaming for 5 years to get speed and athleticism at the linebacker position. And, maybe Marte Mapu was going to be that, and he can't get on the field. And we're going to get there. We're going to get there with Vrabel. By the way, for what it's worth, before we wrap up with the safety market, Daniel Jeremiah was just on Pat McAfee. And Jeremiah said that everybody, quote, everybody in the league thinks that DK Metcalf is going to New England. So
what?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's what Daniel Jeremiah said. He said everybody in the league believes Metcalf will be a Patriot. All right, let's wrap it up with safety, Greg. One big name on this market, like big name, and some other guys that are interesting.
Yeah, Javon Holland from the Dolphins. He's a guy it was a down year for him last year. It was for that whole defense. I mean, they keep transitioning from defensive coordinators, but Javon Holland is an awesome football player. I mean, to have him in the deep middle of the field for this team would be a coup. I mean, he would upgrade things and, allow Peppers and Duggar, if they're on the team, especially, with Peppers, to play closer to the line of scrimmage, which is where they're much better. I love me some Javon Holland. I think he would be a great fit. Cam Bynum, good player, ascending player, a little bit underrated, but I think he would be a good fit here. And then I ended up with two older guys, but again, this would be sort of like a Harold Landry, transition where, these guys upgrade you, especially if the Patriots are going to play more quarters and more, two deep safeties. If you can get, Justin Reed and Justin Simmons. Simmons is getting up there in age. I think he's going to be 32, but he's still a good player. Both those guys are good players and would upgrade the Patriots and I think make them much more sound in the middle of the field.
Told you we had a lot to get to. This was a packed episode. Hopefully you enjoyed. Next week's episodes are going to be even more fun and more packed because we have free agency, folks. So we're going to have some players to talk about. We don't know if they're going to be top tier, but we're going to have some players to talk about. Until then, be well. Enjoy your weekend. He's Bedard. I'm Cattles. We'll talk soon.